All right. We are live from the CITIUS Cafe here at the Hoka Fifth Avenue flagship store in New York City. And we're joined by the one and only NAZ elite head coach, Jack Mullaney. Jack, this is what, year two on the job?
Year two, yeah. I actually started the week after the Chicago Marathon last year.
So how are you feeling?
Yeah, really good. It's been a pleasure just to work with all of our athletes up in Flagstaff. We have a great staff in place as well, and just really have enjoyed the transition and working with our athletes.
Yeah, so for you, I guess, to go from Portland to now handling some of the best on the track, qualifying people for the Olympics, having people run crazy PRs all throughout the year. What's like the most rewarding part of the job?
I think really just seeing the pleasure that the athletes get in their own development. We had some great moments over the course of the last year. Adrian Weldscott getting 10th at the Olympics. He ran 7 races this year, and every single race he ran, he either set a national record, won, or did both. So it was a great year. And so, like, for somebody like that, just to see them go through that and have these breakthroughs every single time they set foot on the track was really exciting. And there's been plenty of others too, but really it's just that journey of, I always say, like, the pleasure of being a coach is that you get to bear witness to the process of what goes on behind the scenes. You know, the fans only get to see what people do for a performance, but you get to kind of know what's actually been going on, all the ups and downs, and being able to kind of bear witness to that process is such a pleasure because it makes those great moments mean even more.
Yeah.
What do you feel like was the hardest part transitioning from coaching collegiately to now coaching on the professional level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, for one, when you're a college coach, your time is sort of 50-50 between recruiting and coaching. The nice part about this is a lot more of my job is spent with the athletes, and that's really exciting. I'm someone that really believes in building a strong connection with each of the athletes, and so just getting to invest more time and getting to know the athlete on a human level first, but also really getting to individualize a lot more, both in training, what we do for racing. That's been probably the biggest adjustment, but it's also been the most rewarding and most fun.
Yeah, I guess, like, that was one thing that Footsum brought up, that is, like, you know, it's different being part of this team because working with you, he was like, no, we relate to each other, you know, person to person before it's athlete coach. So when you set out to meet this whole new roster of athletes and give them that one-on-one time, what were those meetings like? And I guess, like, did you find yourself, like, I forget, it may have been like Danny Mackey tried learning, like, the guitar or the piano or something like that when he was, like, coaching Nia Akins for, like, a little bit, so you, like, find that common ground with the athlete. Did you find yourself doing anything like that?
I mean, that's a great idea
Yeah.
on his part. I think for me, I just always try to start with getting to know the human behind the athlete.
Okay.
That's so important to me because I think an athlete, in order to trust you, they really have to feel like you care about them, and not just, you know, what you do when the gun goes off. They have to know that you'll be there for them, you know, through thick and thin. And I just viewed this role. I knew I was kind of a bit of a no-name to a lot of people when I first got the job, and so I never felt like I was entitled to anyone's trust, and so I feel like I have to earn that every single day. And so that's kind of how I view every day when I get up, even in year two, is every day I gotta earn their trust and continue to build that relationship.
I think you did an interview with Kyle Merber for the Lap Count newsletter, I think, right after you took the job with NAZ, or you did an interview. Yeah. And when he got off the phone with you, he, like, talked to Mac and I, and he was like, man, he's so calm, cool, collected. He's got a little Mike Smith in him. So for you, I guess, with this coaching style of yours, like, where did this all develop? You've had great influences, Rob Connor at Portland. So where have you pulled, you know, to develop your own coaching philosophy?
Well, certainly I feel like I owe most of my coaching career to Rob Connor.
Yeah.
He taught me a lot of really valuable lessons when I first got into the profession. The first is that it's all about people and it's all about connection. I think the first thing I noticed when I started at the University of Portland was that there was always a stranger in the office every single day when I came in, and it was always an alum, someone that had graduated 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that they were in town and they would come back to visit Rob. And we would always kind of talk about it in, like, that more than anything is the value of coaching, is the impact you can have on someone's life. And so Rob was just such a good influence on me in that regard, to know that, hey, you really have to invest in the person. He's also really good at taking what can be a stressful job at times and making it a lot of fun. And I think that's a good thing for us to remember, especially at the professional level, where the stakes are so high that you got to remember at the end of the day, like, we're running for a living, and this is really fun. So he certainly has influenced me in a lot of ways. I also tried to take a lot of pride in the fact that I wasn't a really high-level runner. Mm-hmm. You know, for some people, I think that's great, and you can certainly be a great coach having been a high-level athlete. We see that in a lot of contexts. You know, Ed Eyestone, Laurie Hennis, Mark Coogan. You know, we're all really great athletes. But then you look at somebody like Frank Gagliano or Brother Cole O'Connell or Renato Canova, and it's like, well, they don't have much of an athletic record to speak of. And so I felt like that was not necessarily something you had to have to be a good coach. And as a result, I just feel like I try to pull a lot of my coaching philosophies from other sports, from other walks of life, because so much of this is just about relationships, planning, and connection. And there's a lot of examples of that outside of running, too.
Yeah. And then how much of it are you a science data geek, looking at the latest studies? And because like Joe Bossard is one of those guys who like just crunches whatever latest study and stats are coming out just to, you know, all these advances that we're seeing within the last couple of years. It's the double threshold, it's the impact of bicarb and all these kind of things. Like for you, like how do you balance that into, you know, your own work?
Yeah, I think it's really important to be up to date with all the latest science. That's I feel like that's your responsibility as a coach. You have to stay on top of the latest science, but at the same time, you can't just be a scientist when you're a coach.
Yeah.
You have to I've always believed that at the end of the day, the most important piece of the athlete is their mind. Mm-hmm. And their mind has emotions that are running around in it, you know, a whole bunch of different thoughts. And so for me, you really have to, again, that's why so much of my coaching philosophy is about connection, because you have to be able to get to a point. I'll say this, like, coaching is such an investment in understanding what the experience is like for the athlete. And it's only once you're like, you have that alignment with them and you can be on the same page, that you feel like you're actually working on the same project and you're going towards the same goal. Mm-hmm. You know, if you have all of this science and you're throwing it at this athlete, but they don't understand it, or they don't understand why, or it doesn't really like make sense in their mind, the athlete's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily matter. It's like a two-part equation. You have to be on top of it, but you also have to know the art of communicating it too.
Yeah. All right. So to tie in all of that, we played a game with Mark Coogan, and we did this, I think, also with Diljeet Taylor, like at the Olympic trials. And so we're going to just run all the coaches that we get the chance to sit down with. It's called Overrated, Underrated.
Yeah.
And I want to know where you fall with some of these. So I'll run through them, and you give me your rapid fire, quick take on them. All right? First one should be easy. Altitude.
Underrated.
Underrated.
And that's just because I've seen the jumps that our athletes have made in the last year. And it's pretty special. Even Ahmed, who won this morning, there was not a whole lot of specific work that we did. His win this morning was a lot of really good mileage, nailing the basics, and then letting 7,000 feet take care of the rest. I mean, that's why he made the move from far out. He just knew he was so strong. And so I would say underrated.
All right. Alter G. Or you could say properly rated, like, you know, use it when you can. Yeah.
Properly rated.
Okay.
Because I think it serves its purpose, and for athletes who have either injury concerns or are coming back from an injury, it's a nice way to get an extra aerobic stimulus without taking all the pounding on your legs.
All right, so then this is an interesting one that kind of ties into that. Cross-training while healthy.
I would say underrated. Only because up in Flagstaff, we're frequently in the company of triathletes, cyclists, swimmers, and just hearing the amount of hours that they're able to put in just because they're not having the pounding, it's making me think like, hey, maybe there's a little bit more to be gained there.
Yeah.
Where maybe an athlete will top out at 80, 90, 100 miles a week, but there's some more that we could do and still get a good aerobic stimulus.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a good one to look into. All right. Double threshold.
Overrated only because I think it's been treated as the silver bullet for everybody. And I have seen athletes nail 15 by K, 20 by K, 14 by mile in a single session and are none the worse for it and actually are very good. I think for marathoners especially, it can be very beneficial to just put it all together if you can. But as a way to get in a little bit more, if you're someone that maybe has injury concerns or you're a shorter distance athlete, there's certainly some benefits there.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to Tommy Nohilly, and he was like, yeah, I mean, like, you can separate it into 2 different sessions, but sometimes, like, you could get the same benefit if you just do one long, hard session.
Yeah, right. And there could be more of a cost to that, and that's why double threshold is marketed for the benefits that it is. But I always think if you're a marathoner, part of your training is callousing the legs and being able to do big sessions. And so I'm for it, especially for marathoners.
Blood lactate testing. Do you do a lot of it?
We will test our athletes in the lab, but mostly not. We won't do a whole lot of testing out in the field. Reason being is I want our athletes to develop a really good feel for their body. And if you're constantly outsourcing how you feel to like a little machine that may or may not be correct, there's a percentage of error here, margin of error that we don't always acknowledge with these things. I don't know that that's necessarily healthy. I really want our athletes to have a good sense for whether they are over the line or not. And we do the lab testing to get relative numbers because up at altitude especially, it's important that you don't overdo some of that threshold work. But again, so much of my coaching is about the connection piece and our communication with the athlete, and I just want them being more aware of their body. So there may come a time when we do more in the field just to make sure that we're hitting the right zones.
So in the lab, underrated, in the field, overrated.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Pacing lights.
Overrated. But this is probably a longer conversation on the sport as a whole. I grew up with a love for Formula One.
Yeah.
Still love Formula One. It's my first love in sports. And what I love about Formula One is, yes, you care about gaps, but when Lando Norris wins a Grand Prix, you don't say, oh, his total time was 1 hour, 24 minutes. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's about the racing. And, you know, we've been at races that were paced and had pace lights. The crowd just doesn't get into it as much because it's more just like this binary view of like, are they with the lights or are they not with the lights? And that's not entertaining.
Yeah.
To me, what's entertaining is people making moves, people attacking. Like what Ahmed did today, that was awesome. I was going crazy when he made that move in Central Park because I'm like, that's racing. That's a competitor saying, I'm going on the attack. Can any of you guys come with me?
Yeah.
And I love that.
But then I'll throw the caveat there. If we're at the 10 and you need to chase a standard, then that is where sort of like the pacing lights sometimes come in handy.
Yeah, so that's why this is a nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
Because in order to get your ticket into something like the Olympics,
exactly.
you got to run a time.
Yeah.
I think there should be a way where you can race your way in.
Okay.
I'm all about that. I don't know exactly how we do it. We need more structure in the sport to be able to have that be the case. But at the end of the day, the things that you're qualifying for are championship-style races.
Yeah.
So why should we have paced races to qualify for a championship-style race?
Yeah.
And the 10 is also like now set up to be like the meet to get your standards at. So it's not necessarily like a championship race.
Yeah.
You've got athletes competing tomorrow. Like, what are your keys for them to have a successful day out there?
Yeah, I think for each individual it's a little bit different. But I would say the thing with New York City is you really, for all of our athletes, is we want to have legs for the last 12K after 30K. It's a race where you can get a little carried away in the first half. I think we've seen that, especially in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Some pretty strong positive splits. So you can't necessarily be careless, but at the same time, I just got done talking about how I love racing.
Yeah.
And we have one of the most exciting racers, I think, in the country on our team in Wesley Kiptoo.
Oh, yeah.
And just in the way that the reason he's here is he sees every turn, every change and undulation of this course as an opportunity to go on the attack. Okay?
Love that.
And that's, and that's how he's always raced, But for him especially, but our other 3 athletes as well, success tomorrow is going to be about kind of keeping some of those weapons in the bag for the first 30K.
Yeah.
And then whatever you've got left at 30K or 35K, then it's time to start making those moves and doing what you can. But the weather looks very perfect, so I think as long as our athletes go out in a group kind of roughly where their fitness is at, and leave themselves some space for the end of the race once they get into Manhattan and the Bronx, it'll be a good day.
All right, I got 3 more for you, overrated, underrated.
Sure.
BU's track.
Well, we're circling back again on this idea. I will say BU's track.
Properly rated?
Properly rated because it's where you go to get your time.
Yeah.
Now I don't love it because of what it becomes. But I will say this. So this past year at the Terrier Classic, Adrian Weltscott won the 5,000. I think he won the 5,000 because he already had the standard in the bag. Mm-hmm. So we went in just talking about how to win the race. We didn't talk about this is about hitting the standard.
Yeah.
We talked about this is how you win.
Was that 12:57 or
12:56?
Oh, 56.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And because he was racing to win,
the time.
I think that's why he won.
Yeah.
And everybody else that was racing just did the standard. If somebody goes by you, but you still know, I'm under 13:05, I think a little bit of you turns off because you're like, well, I'm going to still hit my standard, check the box, and get out of here.
Yeah.
Adrian was like, no, I'm here to win. And he did. Yeah.
Love that. All right, 2 more. Weightlifting.
Underrated. Underrated for sure. I've seen the benefits that it can have for athletes in terms of keeping them healthy. And I'm a big believer, too, that a lot of soft tissue stuff can be solved in the weight room. But I will say that it's important to really be intentional when you're in the weight room. I think it's so easy to go in and just start picking stuff up and seeing what you can lift. And we have to be mindful that an athlete is using a lot of energy to do the running training that they're doing. And so if you're wasting energy in the weight room, that's energy that could be spent, getting better. So I think we're really intentional. We're fortunate. We have a really good strength coach, Dan Moore. He's an Irish guy that is really just kind of nails the basics and exactly what each athlete needs and nothing more than that.
Last one, bicarb.
Ooh, I would say overrated, but only because of the experiences that our athletes have had, which is that it hasn't moved the needle too much for them. And that's only anecdotal experience. I know there's other athletes that feel like it's great.
It's like Jakob Ingebrigtsen's like morning cereal, it feels like. Like, that dude just downs it.
Sure. Yeah. and like part of it too is our team is a little longer distance focused, and so I know it's had a little bit more popularity with like 800, 1,500 runners. But we just haven't. We've tried it, and most of our athletes say, I didn't. If anything, I kind of still felt my stomach a little bit. Yeah.
All right, Jack. Well, we appreciate you stopping by. Best of luck to the team, both here this weekend. Already off to a really good start. And then it's kind of wild, right? Because you don't really get breaks as a coach. We got a little bit of cross country. I mean, it's right into indoor season and no breaks.
It's the beautiful part about our team is that we have such a wide variety of events. But we're fortunate that this weekend we brought all of our 5K athletes out here just because I believe so strongly in group energy and its ability to impact an individual performance. And so last night when we were meeting before the race, before the 5K race, we talked to our athletes about, hey, let's inspire the marathoners. They're going to be sitting in their hotel room getting nervous because they got one day to go before their big race. Let's have a big one and show them what you guys can do out on the streets of New York. And I think our athletes delivered on that. So we're excited.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Jack. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Sweet.